The forest had a quiet that felt alive, as if the trees themselves were watching. Birds paused mid-flight, and even the wind seemed to hesitate, waiting for something that only it could sense. At the edge of the glade, a girl knelt beside a sparkling stream, her fingers brushing the water's surface. Her name was Liora, and her presence seemed to brighten the dim forest light, though no one was around to notice. Liora hummed softly, unaware of the shadow slipping through the trees behind her. Its movement was fluid, almost too fast for the eye to track, yet deliberate. The creature, tall, angular, and unnatural, paused for a moment, staring at her with an intensity that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. Then it lunged. It wasn't a moment of hesitation or fear. Liora had learned long ago that when danger came, survival depended on presence of mind. She leapt aside, narrowly avoiding the creature's grasp, her heart hammering in her chest. Its hands were long and clawed, but the girl's reflexes were human, unpredictable, chaotic, and impossibly precise. The attacker snarled, a sound that rippled through the forest like a warning. It was not used to missing its mark. Most prey didn't dodge with a twisting spin, didn't weave between trees with the grace of someone who had spent years running for life and practice mattered more than fear. "You shouldn't be here," the creature hissed, voice sharp and metallic, almost unnatural. "I'm not afraid of you," Liora replied, her voice steady though her chest heaved. The words weren't bravado, they were truth. Humans had always been underestimated. That had been her advantage since childhood. People like the creature thought instinct and strength ruled everything, but humans had something else: imagination, adaptability, and the will to survive. The creature lunged again, faster this time, and she ducked, rolling over roots and under low branches. The forest became a battlefield, but it wasn't brute strength that determined the outcome. It was mind against instinct, heart against cold calculation. Liora used every sense, every reflex she had honed over years of running, climbing, and learning. She became unpredictable, weaving through the forest like wind, a blur the attacker could not pin down. Then something extraordinary happened. The attacker misjudged a leap. Its momentum carried it over a fallen log and into a shallow ravine. It struggled, snarling in frustration, a sound that shook the leaves around them. Liora paused, her chest rising and falling rapidly, eyes fixed on the trapped figure. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, curiosity laced with fear. The creature's gaze softened, if only slightly. "You aren't like the others," it admitted. Its voice trembled with something unfamiliar, confusion, perhaps, or something akin to respect. Liora tilted her head, noticing for the first time the subtle tremor beneath the creature's anger. The energy she felt from it was powerful, yes, but unbalanced. Humans had always been considered weak, fragile. But in that moment, in the sunlight, breaking through the canopy, Liora realized that weakness was often a lie. Strength came in many forms. Sometimes it was the courage to stand when everything in you wanted to run. The creature roared again, attempting to climb out, but Liora's instincts told her to wait. She didn't advance, didn't attack. She simply watched. That was enough. Minutes passed. The air vibrated with tension. And then, for the first time, the attacker hesitated, uncertain. It realized that what it had underestimated wasn't a human body, but the human spirit, a spark that refused to be crushed. "Humans," it said finally, voice low, almost grudgingly. "You are dangerous." Liora smiled faintly. "And you are slow to learn," she said. That single moment changed everything. The creature's eyes widened, and for the first time, it felt something it had never felt before: humiliation. Its prey, the one it thought defenseless, had outmaneuvered it. Not through strength, but through ingenuity, resilience, and courage. The forest returned to silence, but the balance had shifted. The attacker's pride was wounded, and Liora, breathing heavily, stepped forward. She didn't strike, she didn't celebrate, she simply survived. And sometimes that alone was more powerful than any weapon. From that day, the creature learned that humans were not to be underestimated, and that one small, innocent-seeming girl could change the course of its life forever. The creature lay in the shallow ravine, its breathing uneven, eyes darting nervously. It had never felt this way before, defeated, but not by force. No, it had been outwitted, outmoved, outlasted, and the thought burned hotter than any physical wound. Liora didn't move from the edge of the ravine. She had learned long ago that mercy was sometimes the sharpest weapon. Humans were clever in ways predators rarely anticipated. She could see the conflict flickering behind the creature's eyes, pride, anger, confusion, all tangled together like vines. "My name is Liora," she said softly, her voice steady but not mocking. "I didn't attack you. You attacked me." The creature flinched at the name as if words themselves carried weight it had never known. I, it faltered. "Creatures like me, we don't fail. Humans failed all the time, and yet, somehow they survived." That thought fascinated Liora. She crouched down, keeping her eyes level with the creature, showing no fear. "You're learning that failure isn't always the end," she said. "Sometimes it's the beginning." The creature growled, but it was quieter now, subdued by something unfamiliar. Respect, maybe, or understanding. It didn't know what to call it, only that it mattered more than pride. "You're small," it muttered, voice rough, almost grudging. "And fragile. You should have been easy." "Fragile?" Liora's lips curved in a small wry smile. "Maybe, but humans are also persistent. We keep going when we shouldn't. We improvise when we can't. That makes us dangerous." The creature stared at her, a slow realization dawning. It had hunted humans before, thinking them weak, predictable. But Liora had defied every expectation. She had survived not because she was stronger, but because she was human, adaptable, unrelenting, and unafraid to think differently. For the first time, the creature felt fear, not of her body, but of her mind. That fear was foreign, unwelcome, and intoxicating. It made the forest seem larger, the shadows deeper. It made every instinct it had relied on for survival feel suddenly inadequate. Liora stood and stepped closer to the edge of the ravine, her gaze steady, unwavering. "You're not invincible," she said simply. "No matter how strong, no matter how fast, no one can predict everything. Not all of us are the same. Not all humans are the same." The creature's mind raced, trying to comprehend this. It had never considered that intelligence, creativity, and willpower could be more dangerous than claws, teeth, or speed. And yet, here she was, a girl, small and unarmed, standing over it with nothing but courage and clarity. "You," it breathed, voice cracking with emotion it didn't understand. "You've changed something." "I didn't set out to," Liora replied. "But sometimes, standing your ground changes everything. You just learned that the hard way." The forest seemed to shift around them. Birds returned to the trees, the wind began to rustle leaves once more, and the shadows retreated. Even nature seemed to recognize the lesson that had been taught. The balance had shifted. The creature tried to rise, its body still tense. Pride wounded, but awareness growing. "I don't understand you," it admitted almost as a whisper. "How can someone so small be so strong?" "Strength isn't always what you think," Liora said. "Humans survive because we refuse to stop, even when it seems impossible. We fight with our minds, with our hearts, with our choices. That's why we're dangerous, that's why we endure." The creature's eyes lingered on her, confusion giving way to something deeper, something between respect and awe. It had thought itself a predator, the apex of instinct and power. And yet, it had been bested by a human girl's courage, her imagination, her unrelenting spirit. Liora began to walk away, leaving the creature in the ravine, her steps calm, measured. Every movement radiated certainty, confidence, and quiet strength. She didn't need to look back. The creature already knew it had been defeated in a way that no physical fight could erase. As she disappeared among the trees, the creature remained where it was, a flicker of understanding dawning. Humans weren't just fragile flesh and weak bones. They carried within them a spark that could ignite change, challenge the strongest, and endure what nothing else could survive. And in that moment, the creature realized the world would never underestimate humans again, because Liora had shown that the smallest being could leave a mark deeper than the sharpest claws, and courage could be a weapon more powerful than strength itself. The forest had quieted, but not because danger had vanished. It had shifted as if the air itself remembered what had occurred. Liora walked steadily along the mossy path, the stream glinting beside her like a trail of scattered stars. Yet she didn't feel relief, not yet. Instinct told her that the creature's failure wouldn't end the story. Behind her, the creature struggled out of the ravine. Its pride was a wound that throbbed with every movement. It could not stop thinking about her, about the way she had danced around its attacks, about how something so small had so effortlessly unsettled it. Most beings it hunted never survived even half as long. Most never dared to stand. But this human had done both. That night, the forest settled into uneasy stillness. Liora found a small clearing and built a fire, its warmth cutting through the damp chill. She wasn't afraid, she was cautious. She had learned that courage wasn't absence of fear, but the ability to move forward despite it. The creature watched from the shadows, hidden yet unable to turn away. Pride still burned, but beneath it was something new, curiosity. It had been taught a lesson, yes, but also exposed to a phenomenon it had never understood: human resilience. Humans did not fight only for survival. They fought because something inside them refused to yield, something invisible, persistent, untouchable by claws or teeth. Liora's fingers traced the surface of the fire, her thoughts wandering to the past. She had grown up in a world that underestimated her, where her size and age often meant being ignored, dismissed. And yet here she was, living proof that humans were more than what others saw. Every misstep she had survived, every challenge she had overcome, had prepared her for moments like this. The creature, hidden among the dense trees, whispered to itself. How can she be so? It could not find the word. Determination? Unpredictable, fearless? Each one fell short. She was all of them, yet none. She was human, and that alone was enough. Night deepened. Liora finally lay down, her back to the fire, eyes scanning the darkness. She sensed rather than saw the creature. It lingered, not attacking, not retreating. Its mind churned, torn between instinct and curiosity, between desire to hunt and a strange new respect. By dawn, the forest had shifted once more. Birds returned to their songs. The light filtered gently through the canopy, and the creature approached the clearing, not with claws raised, but with caution. Every step was measured. Every movement spoke of hesitation. "I did not expect this," it said, voice low and rough. Liora's gaze lifted, meeting its eyes without fear. "Expect what?" she asked, calm but unyielding. "That humans, you—" The creature faltered, unable to articulate the complexity of its thoughts. It had been taught to see humans as prey, yet here stood one who had defied all rules. "You survive." "Differently," it admitted finally. Liora tilted her head, studying it. "We adapt, we endure. We think when others act." "That makes all the difference." A tense silence followed. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the invisible witness to the growing understanding between predator and prey. In that moment, neither was truly dominant. Both were learning, both were testing limits, and the rules of the forest were beginning to bend. The creature's pride still burned, but something else had begun to bloom, an awareness that humans were not to be underestimated. That one girl, one human spark, could teach lessons no amount of strength could convey. "You will not attack me again," Liora said, voice firm, but not cruel. "And you will not underestimate us." The creature's eyes narrowed. It wanted to deny it, wanted to roar and assert its dominance, but deep inside it knew she was right. Something in its understanding of the world had shifted irreversibly, and that shift was terrifying. Because if humans could survive, endure, and outthink predators, what else might they accomplish? What other boundaries might they shatter? The fire burned low, casting shadows that danced across the clearing, and in those shadows the creature considered a future it had never imagined, one in which humans were not prey, but a force capable of rewriting the rules of the world itself. Liora fell asleep as the sun rose, unaware of the silent watcher, yet profoundly connected to it. The forest held its breath, knowing that something extraordinary was beginning. The hunter had failed. The human had endured, and in that failure, the first crack in centuries of assumptions about humanity had appeared. It would be the first of many. The days that followed were quiet, yet charged with an invisible tension. Liora moved through the forest with the ease of someone who had learned to belong to its rhythms, while the creature lingered in the shadows, its thoughts circling her like a storm it could not control. Pride wrestled with awe, instinct clashed with curiosity, and a slow, undeniable respect grew beneath the tangled layers. But the forest had its own will. It had observed the clash of human and predator, and now it tested both. Strange signs appeared, fallen trees where no wind had blown, unfamiliar scents carried by the breeze, and an uneasy hush that even the creatures of the underbrush seemed to sense. Something was coming. Something neither human nor predator had anticipated. Liora noticed the subtle shifts immediately. Her instincts had sharpened after years of surviving when others faltered. She paused beside the stream, noticing the water rippling without wind, the fish darting nervously. She sensed it before she saw it. A new presence, one that moved differently from the creature she had already encountered. The creature, watching from a distance, felt the same tension. Its instincts screamed warning, its body tense and ready for confrontation. It had faced humans before, and it had faced prey and rival predators, but this was different. From the shadows emerged a larger, darker figure. Its eyes glimmered with malice and intelligence, and its body radiated power. The newcomer moved with terrifying precision, calculating, patient, aware. Unlike the first creature, this one had no hesitation, no curiosity, no vulnerability to human unpredictability. Its intent was clear: dominance, destruction, control. Liora froze for a moment, heart hammering in her chest, yet she did not retreat. Humans had learned to face impossible odds and survive, often through ingenuity rather than strength. She scanned her surroundings, noticing every branch, every route, every potential path. Survival depended on anticipation and quick thinking, and she had both. The creature stepped forward, finally revealing itself fully. Its eyes met Liora's, a silent message passing between them. No words were needed. She understood. They would have to work together despite everything. Their survival depended on cooperation, on recognizing the unique strengths each brought to the battle ahead. The newcomer advanced, and the air seemed to vibrate with the weight of its power. It was calculating, relentless, and cruel in ways neither of them had yet experienced. The first creature growled, feeling an unfamiliar fear creep through its chest. It had never faced anything like this. Nothing could match this level of instinct, strength, and strategy. Liora stepped forward, meeting the predator's gaze with a calm determination that startled it. "We survive differently," she reminded it, almost gently. "And together we are stronger than you know." The newcomer hissed, a sound that shook the leaves. It did not respond with words, but with a calculated strike, testing, probing, measuring the defenses of both human and predator. Liora dodged, leaped, and used the environment with unparalleled precision. Roots became traps, streams became barriers, and shadows became allies. Every move was deliberate, every action a statement. Humans adapted, humans endured, and humans refused to yield. The first creature hesitated, torn between instinctual aggression and a grudging acknowledgement of human ingenuity. It had never depended on anyone, never needed anyone. Yet here, beside this girl, it realized that survival sometimes required more than claws and teeth. Strategy, anticipation, and cooperation were weapons it had never considered. Minutes stretched, but each one was a study in resilience and intelligence. Liora directed, maneuvered, and improvised. The newcomer struck again, powerful and precise, yet it faltered repeatedly. Frustration rippled through it like electricity. No human had ever resisted with such relentless creativity. No predator had ever been forced to recalibrate so thoroughly by one small unarmed girl. And in that moment, the first creature understood what humans had always known. Strength alone could not dominate the human spirit. Courage, ingenuity, and willpower could bend the world in ways brute force never could. The newcomer hissed, backing off, reassessing its approach. The forest trembled with tension, and Liora, standing tall despite exhaustion, whispered quietly to the first creature, "We are more than you expect. That's why we survive. The predator nodded, a flicker of understanding passing through its eyes. The battle had only just begun, yet the first victory was already theirs. Not through strength, but through the undeniable resilience of humanity. The forest held its breath. Something extraordinary had begun, and it would not end quietly. The forest had grown darker, heavier, as if it sensed the rising storm of conflict. Liora moved cautiously, every step deliberate, every sense alert. She knew the newcomer was no ordinary predator. Its intelligence radiated like a shadow pressing against the sunlight, and yet, despite the danger, she did not waver. Behind her, the first creature followed, not as a hunter this time, but as an ally. It moved with tension and hesitation, learning from the girl it had once sought to dominate. Every step it took mirrored a slow evolution, a recognition that humans were unpredictable and perhaps far more dangerous than brute strength alone could measure. Liora paused at the edge of a ravine, sensing the newcomer's presence before it appeared. The creature emerged from the shadows like a living nightmare, its body sleek and muscular, eyes glowing with calculated malice. It had observed humans, studied them, yet it clearly underestimated the depth of their adaptability. "You survived longer than I expected," it hissed, voice sharp and cruel. "But survival alone is not enough." Liora tilted her head, her gaze steady, unflinching. "Survival is never enough," she replied softly. "We endure. We adapt, we learn, and when we must, we fight smarter than you think." The newcomer lunged faster than anything Liora had faced before. She rolled, barely avoiding the strike, and used the uneven terrain to her advantage. A fallen tree became a lever, a tangle of roots a trap. Every movement showcased human ingenuity, resourcefulness born not of strength but of experience, of living in a world that demanded constant adaptation. The first creature growled beside her, unsure whether to attack or protect. Its instincts screamed one way, its evolving understanding screamed another. For the first time, it realized that humans could change the rules of engagement, not by dominating with raw power, but by thinking, predicting, and improvising. "You rely on tricks," the newcomer snarled, recoiling from a well-timed maneuver. "But you cannot outlast me forever." Liora's eyes gleamed, a spark of resolve lighting her face. "I don't need to outlast you," she said. "I need to outthink you. And humans, we never stop thinking." The battle intensified. The newcomer struck again and again, relentless, precise, and terrifying. Yet Liora remained elusive, her movements a symphony of agility and strategy. The first creature, forced to observe, felt a strange stir of awe. It had hunted many, struck fear into countless beings, but never had it encountered something or someone so resilient, so untouchable through skill and mind rather than strength alone. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Liora used her environment in ways the newcomer could not anticipate. Vines to entangle, rocks to trip, streams to mask her presence. Every action was deliberate, calculated yet fluid, instinctive yet informed. She was alive in a way the newcomer had never known, a human alive to possibility, unbound by convention or expectation. And then, in a sudden shift, the first creature lunged, not to attack, but to shield. It had learned. It had realized that strength without strategy could falter, that instinct alone could fail. The human beside it, small and unarmed, held the power that brute force could not break. The newcomer hissed, stunned by the sudden alliance. Its attacks became chaotic, uncoordinated, and for the first time it hesitated. Liora seized the moment, exploiting every opening. A clever diversion, a sudden leap, a calculated strike against the environment itself. It was enough. The predator stumbled, caught in the snares of its own underestimation. Its glowing eyes widened, realization dawning. The human spirit, the spark of ingenuity, courage, and persistence was something it could not dominate, could not predict, and could not destroy. Breathing heavily, Liora turned to the first creature. "See?" she said, voice steady despite exhaustion. "This is what humans do. We survive, and we teach others, sometimes unintentionally, lessons they can't ignore." The first creature looked at her, awe and confusion mingling in its expression. It had thought itself the apex, the ultimate predator. Yet here it was, learning humility from a being it had once tried to kill. The newcomer, now wounded and disoriented, realized the truth too late. Humans were not merely prey. They were a force of adaptability, unpredictability, and courage, a combination that no amount of strength could defeat. As the forest fell into a tense quiet, Liora's chest rose and fell steadily. She had survived once more not by strength but by being human, and the first creature standing beside her finally understood the unspoken truth. Humans could reshape the world, bend expectations, and survive the impossible. For the first time, predator and prey shared an understanding, unspoken but undeniable, and in that quiet, extraordinary moment, the forest itself seemed to acknowledge it. The human spirit was a power no one, not even the strongest, could ignore. The forest was alive with anticipation. Every leaf, every whispering branch seemed to sense the coming reckoning. Liora moved with quiet determination, her senses sharpened to a razor's edge. She had survived impossible odds before, yet something deep inside warned her that the final confrontation was near. The first creature, once her attacker and now her reluctant ally, walked beside her. It had changed. Its pride still lingered, but it carried something new: respect. It studied Liora, noting her calm focus, the way her mind danced with possibilities, the way her human spirit seemed to bend the world to her will. It had never thought that one small human could teach a predator humility, and yet here she was. And then they sensed it. The newcomer. The dark predator had returned, more cautious but no less deadly, circling them through the shadows. It had spent hours recalculating, adapting, trying to anticipate Liora's ingenuity. Yet even it could not account for the unpredictable heart of a human. Liora stopped at the crest of a hill, sunlight spilling over the clearing ahead. She turned to the first creature, her voice calm but commanding. "We face this together, not as hunter and prey, but as two forces that can outthink the strongest. Watch me, learn, and act when the moment comes." The creature nodded, a flicker of understanding crossing its eyes. It was learning a truth humans had known for millennia. Courage and intelligence could surpass raw power. And the moment came almost immediately. The newcomer struck, launching itself with terrifying speed and precision. Liora dodged, leaping onto a rock using momentum and gravity to propel herself to safety. Every move was calculated, yet fluid, intuitive, human. She wasn't merely surviving. She was orchestrating the battle, turning the forest itself into an ally. Branches became barriers, loose stones became distractions, and shadows masked her presence. The first creature lunged at the newcomer, not to attack recklessly, but to create openings. It moved with a newfound understanding, guided by Liora's insight. Together, human and predator became something extraordinary, a team that thought, adapted, and endured. The dark predator hissed, frustrated. Every strike met a counter. Every advance was anticipated, every tactic deflected by a combination of cunning and cooperation. It had never encountered such unpredictability. It had never faced a force that refused to yield to raw power. Liora smiled faintly, heart racing but mind clear. "Strength is not the measure of survival," she whispered almost to herself. "Strategy, courage, and willpower. That is what makes humans unstoppable." The newcomer hesitated for the first time. Its glowing eyes flickered with disbelief. How could a mere human, supported by a single creature, defy it so completely? It had relied on brute force, instinct, and speed, yet each was countered, neutralized, or turned against it. Then Liora acted decisively. Using the terrain, she created a trap with natural elements. A hidden pit concealed by foliage, a network of roots designed to entangle, and a series of calculated decoys. The newcomer, overconfident in its power, fell right into it, struggling against the clever construction. The first creature watched, astonished. It had never imagined that survival could be achieved so elegantly. It had relied on claws, fangs, and instinct. Liora relied on her mind, and that had been enough. Breathing heavily, Liora stepped forward, placing herself in full view. Her voice rang clear across the clearing. "You attacked an innocent. You underestimated humanity. That was your mistake. And it is a mistake you will never repeat." The newcomer roared, a sound of fury and frustration, but it could not escape. Its strength alone could not overcome human ingenuity and spirit. It thrashed, but the trap held. The first creature approached, standing beside Liora. No longer an enemy, it had embraced a new truth. Humans were not prey. Humans could think, adapt, and endure in ways even the strongest predators could not predict. Together, they had rewritten the rules of survival. For the first time, the forest seemed to exhale, acknowledging the extraordinary bond between human and predator. Liora's courage had shifted the balance not through force, but through intelligence, resilience, and unyielding spirit, and as the sunlight bathed the clearing, the defeated predator finally understood. Humanity was not fragile. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and one small girl had proven it beyond question. The forest fell into quiet once more, but the lesson lingered. Survival was more than strength. It was heart, mind, and spirit combined, a lesson the world would remember carried in the echoes of Liora's defiance and brilliance. The forest was still, almost reverent. Dawn spilled gold across the treetops, illuminating a clearing transformed by the struggle of the night. Liora stood at its center, her chest rising and falling steadily, eyes calm yet fierce. The defeated predator lay restrained, caught not by brute force alone, but by the ingenuity, courage, and unrelenting spirit of a human. Beside her, the first creature, once her attacker, now her ally, observed in silence. It had changed irrevocably. Its pride, once untouchable, had been tempered by respect and humility. It had learned that humans were not merely fragile beings to be dominated. They were forces of will, capable of reshaping the world through intelligence, courage, and determination. "You've shown me everything I never understood," it said quietly, its voice rough but sincere. "Your kind is extraordinary." Liora's gaze softened, but her resolve remained unshaken. "We endure," she said simply. "We survive, we adapt. That's all humans have ever needed to do, and that's why we thrive, even when the odds are impossible." The defeated predator struggled, its glowing eyes flickering with frustration and disbelief. It had relied on instinct, on strength, on fear to dominate, yet all had failed against one small human girl. It now faced the truth that humans wielded a power unlike any other, a power that could not be measured in fangs or speed. "You attacked an innocent," Liora said, her voice carrying across the quiet forest. "You thought it would be easy. You were wrong. And because of that, you've learned a lesson you will never forget." The first creature stepped forward, standing protectively beside her. Once it had hunted humans, now it understood that humans were not to be underestimated. Their resilience, their creativity, their ability to think beyond instinct, it was a force even the fiercest predator could not ignore. The defeated predator, finally catching its breath, looked at Liora with a mixture of awe and reluctant respect. How can one small being possess such strength?" it whispered, almost as if asking a question it already knew the answer to. Liora smiled faintly. "Strength isn't always about size or power. It's about heart, mind, and spirit. It's about refusing to give up, refusing to be controlled, refusing to surrender to fear. That's what makes humans different. That's what makes us dangerous." For the first time, the forest seemed to acknowledge the truth of her words. Birds returned to the branches, sunlight danced on the leaves, and even the wind seemed to carry a soft murmur of approval. Nature itself recognized the power of the human spirit, the spark that could challenge the strongest, survive the impossible, and inspire awe in even the fiercest predators. The first creature lowered its gaze, a silent nod of acknowledgement. It had witnessed a human triumph not through strength alone, but through ingenuity, resilience, and courage, and it had learned that no predator could ever underestimate humanity again. The defeated predator, realizing it could not win, retreated into the shadows, its pride wounded, but its understanding deepened. It had been taught a lesson far harsher than any fight could inflict, a lesson in respect, humility, and the indomitable will of a human being. Liora watched it go, her expression calm, serene, yet resolute. She had survived, she had endured, and she had reminded the world in her own quiet but unforgettable way that humanity was not to be underestimated. The first creature turned to her, a hint of a smile in its eyes. "You've changed everything," it said softly. "Not just for me, but for all who think humans are weak." Liora nodded, a quiet strength radiating from her. "Humans aren't weak. We endure, we adapt, we survive, and sometimes that alone is more powerful than anything else." As the forest returned to its natural rhythm, a profound truth lingered in the air. One small human girl had shifted the balance of power, changed the hearts of a predator, and left a mark that would not soon be forgotten. Courage, ingenuity, and the human spirit had triumphed where strength alone could not, and in that moment, Liora understood something deeper than survival. Humanity's true power was not in what it could destroy, but in what it could inspire. The forest held its breath one last time and then exhaled. A girl had survived, a predator had learned, and the world itself had glimpsed the extraordinary force that is the human spirit. One girl had proven what all humans had always known. To underestimate humanity was the greatest mistake anyone could ever make.